This lesson is graphing proportional relationships. So what this is going to do is this lesson's going to do is it's going to take what we were doing with ratio tables and looking at whether something is proportional or not, and you're going to take that information from a ratio table and you are going to graph it on a coordinate plane. If I could get my computer here to work. So in a coordinate plane, you're going to have 4 quadrants. And you're going to get this sheet, so you don't have to copy any of this down. Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, and Quadrant 4, and then you're going to get points. Those points are going to be the numbers that are in your ratio table, okay? And you'll have to graph them, and this should be a review to you. We've already talked about this year at the beginning in the first quarter of the year. We reviewed it. That first number is your x coordinate, that second number is your y coordinate, and those are going to be the items that are going to be in your ratio table. So now let's get on to what is truly the lesson. So if you look at this first example, you'll be determining whether quantities are proportional in terms of their graph. So this is probably, in all of my years of teaching this is probably students' favorite ways to determine if something is proportional or not. You can graph those quantities. Oh, well, if I click, there we go. You can graph those quantities on the coordinate plane if the graph of the 2 quantities is a straight line and it goes through the origin. This is huge. This is a big deal. Okay? Then the quantities are considered to be proportional. So you need to make sure you copy that in your notes. When you take a ratio table or a graph, if you can look at a graph, and if it's a straight line, and if it goes through that origin, then it's proportional. So if you look at this first example, you have the slowest mammal on Earth is the tree sloth. It moves at a speed of 6 feet per minute. Determine whether the number of feet the sloth moves is proportional to the number of minutes it moves by graphing it on a coordinate plane, and then explain your reasoning. This is exactly what you're going to have to do today. So we put the information in a ratio table, minutes over feet, feet per minute. So, and we start this time with the number 0. Oops. We start this time with the number 0. That number 0 we start with because if it's proportional, it's going to go through the origin. If it isn't proportional, it's not going to go through the origin. So you want to always start with your input value as 0. 0 minutes. In 0 minutes, how far is he going to go? He's going to go 0 feet. Okay? And then you continue with your ratio table. These are the numbers then that you are going to graph. 0, 0, 1, 6, 2, 12. Now you have to, just like I said before with your ratio tables, you have to have at least 3 points on your graph when you graph it. Okay? So you graph those ordered pairs on a coordinate plane, then connect the ordered pairs. The line passes through the origin and it is straight, so the number of feet traveled is proportional to the number of minutes. Okay, so now you need to look at problem A. James earns $5 an hour babysitting. Determine whether the amount of money James earns babysitting is proportional to the number of hours he babysits by graphing on a coordinate plane. Explain your reasoning in your work zone. Okay, so now turn this off, turn this on. Now we need to create a ratio table. So your ratio table is going to be the money he earns compared to the hours. Okay? And like I said before, you should always start with a simple number. And you should always start, because we're determining if it's proportional or not, with 0. So if he works 0 hours, how much money is he going to earn? $0. Okay? So if he works 1 hour, he earns, it says, $5. So that if he works 2 hours, he's going to earn $10. So then what you have to do is you have to graph that on a coordinate plane. Now, every single one of our graphs are really going to be in this first quadrant. You need to draw the 4 quadrants, but this, you don't have to go is the full length, okay, like you would in the other ones. And a lot of times your graphs are going to be drawn for you. You just have your graphs, your coordinate, your axes are going to be drawn for you, and you're just going to have to graph your lines. So if we do this, And I'm just going to go 2, we'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay. 0, 0 would be right here. Okay. 1, 5 would be about right here. And then 2, 10 would be about right here. And then and I'm not going to be able to draw a straight line with this marker, but you would see that you could draw a straight line. And that, yes, it does go through the origin. So therefore, it's proportional. So you should write an answer that's like this. The amount and again, you relate it back to the context of the problem, and that's what I'm going to expect. The amount of money James earns is proportional to the number of hours he babysits. The graph has a straight line and goes through the origin, passes through the origin. That's what I want to see for an answer. You need to say that it is or is not proportional, relating it to the context of the problem, and then why it is or is not proportional. Okay? In this case, it is because it's a straight line, passes through the origin. Okay. So let's go on to example number 2. Example number 2 has the cost of renting a video game from Games Inc. is shown at the table. Determine whether the cost is proportional to the number of games by graphing it on a coordinate plane. So first game is $3, second game is $5, third game is $7, fourth game is $9. Okay? So you write those ordered pairs on your number line. The ordered pairs are 1, 3, 2, 5, 3, 7, 4, 9. Okay? So is this a proportional relationship? This line is not a proportional relationship. So you would write the cost of video games is not proportional. Now this is the piece that you need to be making sure that you're writing. So if it's not proportional, the cost of the video games is not proportional to the number of games rented. Why? And they put it up here. Doesn't pass through the origin. Okay. Okay. So let's look at B. I want you to pause your computer and I want you to do B. You take the information in the calories burned, you graph it, and you tell me if it's proportional or not with the correct terminology. Okay, so it says the table shows the number of calories an athlete burned per minute of exercise. Determine whether the number of calories burned is proportional to the number of minutes by graphing it on the coordinate plane. Explain your reasoning in the work zone. Well, if you did that, you would have a line that looks similar to this. Okay? And this is not proportional. It's not proportional because it is not a straight line. It does pass through the origin, but it's not straight. It kind of curves. So that then makes it non-proportional. Okay? And hopefully you got that. You can't say, well, because where this line would have to go, this last dot would have to be like right around here in order for it to be proportional, and it's not. Okay? All right. Let's turn the page here. The last thing you're going to have to do is you're going to be looking at two situations, two lines, and you're going to determine which one is proportional and which one is not, and say why again. So in this example, it says which batting cage represents a proportional relationship between the number of pitches thrown and the cost. So you have softball plus and fun center. Which one is proportional? Well, softball plus is a line, and so is fun center. Softball plus, though, does not go through the origin. Fun center does. So you would say the graph for fun center is a straight line through the origin. So the relationship, between the number of pitches thrown and the cost is proportional. That would be a perfect example of what you would say to answer this question. Okay, so this really is not a difficult lesson. All you're doing is you're going to be graphing, and I have graph paper for you to use, so your graphs can be done well. And you are going to get graded on the graphing and whether the graph is done correctly or not. So you have to do the guided practice part worksheet. So you have to do number 1. You have to create a ratio table here because there isn't one. So whenever there is not a ratio table created, you have to create one. And you have to graph it. Okay? So we're not going to determine unit rates. We're not going to determine constant rates. We're going to look at graphing it on a number or on a coordinate plane. So you have to create a ratio table for number one and then graph it and then tell me is it proportional or not and why. And then number two, you need to look at the two relationships here and tell me which one is proportional and why. Okay, so do problems number one and two on your guided practice worksheet.